Welcome back, everyone. Marvin Jackson here with Nicole White and Donna Hopkins. And joining us by phone from Midtown Manhattan is former Sideline Report co-host and our favorite ESPN reporter, Miss Josina Anderson. Hi, JoJo.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How you doing?
You got some cupcakes on the set for me?
Oh, man. Cupcakes, hot dogs, all that stuff. I tell you. Well, look, Donna and Nicole are here, and I tell you, it's ladies' night, really. I mean, it's all ladies and me, so I'm a lucky guy.
Exactly.
Josina, we have a mess here in Washington, and what have you heard about this team that is such a seemingly dysfunctional team, to say the least?
Well, I would say the first thing is that I believe that there's more than meets the eye. I have heard a few things that I really can't go into too much detail about just because the conversation was off the record. But I guess the best thing I would say is that everything is not always the way it seems. And like in any corporation in America, there are always things that are happening at a high level that everyone's not always privy to. And sometimes, things are made to look certain ways. So, the best thing that I can say is that, just pay attention really to how things happen this week. Pay attention to the quarterback depth chart and where Robert is, where he isn't, how Kirk Cousins gets used or not used. Because, I really feel like, I guess the best I could say is that there's really more than meets the eye. I think the best thing I can also add in terms of perspective really would be just how things have been handled publicly with respect to Jay Gruden and the treatment of your franchise quarterback, because I really feel like some of the things that were said were a reflection of his rookie status in this position, but also I'm not sure that other quarterbacks would have been talked about in such fashion. Now, granted, RG3 is not a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but there are also quarterbacks that have not achieved, certain statuses as far as, postseason trophies. And I'm just not sure that they would have gotten talked about the same way publicly. And again, I just, put publicly on that as well. And I think that's a little bit, disturbing. But at the same time, I do feel that RG3 is not obviously performing the way he was his rookie year. I feel like when I see him step up in the pocket and climb the ladder in the pocket, he looks afraid of getting hit. And I think he is behind in his ability to read defenses at a point that he would have been able to had he had the amount of games and the amount of time that you would have coincided with someone who was healthy for a full 16 games per season that he's been already in the NFL.
Donna?
Yeah, hey Josina, with what you've heard as far as, and I agree with everything that you pretty much said, that he is behind the curveball as far as where he should be at this stage of the game, RG3. So when they talk about, and I'm sure you've heard them talking about the quarterback situation between Cousins and McCoy and RG3, are they saying that it was a mistake by Gruden in his rookie season to have benched RG3 or to let him play through these last 3 games or so forth to see what you've got going into next season to make that decision? Because I heard through the grapevine that they may be looking for another quarterback through the draft, and I would think that that would be a mistake, needing that, being that they need help so much on the offensive line and the defensive line. So what have you heard about those situations?
Well, everything comes down to, draft order. Obviously, they'll be near the top because of where their record is right now. And when you do get in a position where you're evaluating incoming talent like a Mariota, Jameis Winston, and some of these other quarterbacks that will be the influx of the 2015 class, I can't say that I don't necessarily understand them taking a look. You have to evaluate the full slate of everything that you need and who's going to be available at the picks that you will have. That's a little bit hard to say at this point, just in terms of not really having a full idea of exactly where they're going to be, if draft day trades are going to be conducted and all those other things, or even veteran trades and things like that. But to answer your question as far as, Kirk Cousins and the other guys, and thinking, well, okay, they already have that and they have other positions of need. I guess the first thing I just want to say is I just feel like they're going to give RG3 a little bit more of an opportunity, and I think there's just a little bit more maybe support than what's occurring, publicly, at least in the most important place. And I think that will end up showcasing itself. But at the same time, RG3 has to, show that football-wise, because even if he has maybe more support than maybe is coming out publicly, I would say, if he doesn't continue to produce on the field, I don't know how much is going to matter, because at some point, public pressure will lean on the front office, much as it has done this week in Cleveland. I mean, you're looking at Mike Pettin and wanting to stay as long as he could with Brian Hoyer, but eventually, even he had to fold to Johnny Manziel, and the pressure can mount to counter and change certain things that are going on internally. But Don, I really can't say that I would be upset with the Redskins looking at, another quarterback, because regardless of what I'm hearing on the inside, I think it's still my belief that RG3 would just benefit from a change of environment. I think at the end of the day, I still think he needs a change of environment. So.
Agree with you 100%, probably.
Josina, let's turn to the defense. The defensive backs have not been covering. A lot of that, of course, has to do with pass rush. They're just not putting enough pressure on these offenses. And a lot of people are saying Jim Haslett has to go. And we're trying to figure out, are Jim Haslett's days numbered? One thing we did, we went to the Rams locker room, and the defense has been having problems covering tight ends. So we went to their locker room to talk to the tight end who caught 2 touchdown passes against the Redskins. And he had some pretty interesting things to say. And they saw that the Redskins safeties and defensive backs were dropping off when the tight ends were going out into coverage, and they knew that they would be open. And so Jim Haslett should know that these offenses are seeing this.
Well, it's interesting because I was looking at the Redskins defensive stats before it came on, and the interesting thing is that in actuality, there has been an improvement from last year to this year. If you're looking at the total defense and the pass defense, going from kind of the middle of the pack to the bottom of the, top tier. So if you're Haslett, you're probably going to be pointing to those statistics and showing that there has been some improvement, at least numerically. Now, as far as what meets the eye and some of the things that you guys are seeing on the film, you watch those games day in and day out and probably see that more than me. But I will say that as a whole, since he's been there, I can understand why London Fletcher has expressed some frustration, and to the end of what you were talking about, some of the Rams tight ends feeling like they had daylight in the middle of the field that perhaps they feel like they shouldn't if someone was playing them tighter and doing some better scouting of their offense. But I can't say that I'm necessarily opposed to the idea of there being change, because I think just historically looking over how the defense has performed in the NFC East or against some other teams, overall you would probably say it has been disappointing. But I think you also have to evaluate the personnel, and I would almost throw the question back to you all on the set. How much do you guys feel like you have the proper personnel to execute a better defense?
We don't have D'Angelo Hall, of course, and we got some pretty young cornerbacks, so they're still learning, of course. But one thing, Josina, I want to make the point that we've had some statistics that have been misleading in the past, where it looks like you know, the yardage that we're giving up is not that bad, but we're giving up the points and we're losing games and we're giving up big plays. And that's what the problem seems to be with our defense.
Yeah, because I think Gruden talked about that a couple of weeks ago, is the fact that this is the youngest secondary in football and everything. And they are making mistakes that it shouldn't be, but this is the NFL. You shouldn't be making those kind of mistakes that in 2 weeks you've given up big plays of 80 yards, back-to-back 70 yards and all of that, where no one is 30 or 20 yards within touching that player on the offensive side of the ball. So it's just bad. And I think, like Josina said, is that I don't think that they have the personnel in place right now to run a 3-4 or 4-3 defense in general, and some changes need to take place if this team is to go forward and be back in a playoff situation, because this has been a bad product for a long time.
Josina, where do you see Gruden next year? You see him back with the Washington Redskins? We got about a minute.
Well, I think the best way to answer that question would be to ask that again once we realize what coaches are actually on the market. Because, you know, you can always love the one you're with until you see somebody you'd rather be with. Right. So, you know, if Jim Harbaugh ends up coming on the market, you know, or there's some other candidates that seem attractive, I can't necessarily say that Daniel Snyder wouldn't look, but for someone to have a multi-year contract that Gruden has and to really only get one shot after 1 year, you also got to kind of look at how your recruiting pitch looks, and to not be able to necessarily stick past his rookie year, I don't know how that also appeals to the next person coming in if you were to try to sell your job to another person as well. So right. I would say my answer to that is still up in the air.
All right. Well, look, thanks so much, Josina, for calling in. And we got to do this again.